Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents, the Australia Institute podcast where we're talking about just what the hell is going on in the economy. I'm Elinor Johnston-Leake, the senior content producer here at the Australia Institute, and as always, I'm talking to our chief economist, Greg Jericho. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Elinor.
How are we doing this week?
We're powering through budget week. We're nearly there.
It has been a big week indeed.
Big week. Both you and I were doing a politics in the pub last night.
Yep.
This morning we're fired up for the podcast. The night before we were doing budget night. It's been a long one.
It sure has. And I mean, this budget, obviously I'll ask you what you thought, but what I thought about it is it kind of felt, it wasn't a flop, but it just felt like everything that was in it was kind of leaked or announced beforehand. So there wasn't a huge amount that anyone was really shocked about.
No, not really. Because as listeners will know, I wrote for Guardian, so I was in the Guardian lockup during the budget, and there was this kind of view of there's no big shock,
surprises.
Literally everything had been leaked,
all the big stuff.
But it was a thing where I was like, okay, but that doesn't mean the budget itself is kind of a damp squib, because I was like, it's only because we know these things.
Yeah.
But if we'd come in absolutely fresh and we opened up the budget papers and saw, oh my God, they're ditching the capital gains discount. Oh God, they're basically ending negative gearing as we know. Oh God, they're absolutely smashing discretionary trusts, plus the big cuts to the NDIS. You'd be like, wow, they're going for it.
Yeah.
It was just that I think the government knew that if that was the case, the next day would have headlines of shock, they're coming for your house,
absolute chaos.
All of this. And so because these things were so huge, and I actually think they are quite big, especially the capital gains tax stuff, which we'll get to, that the government kind of smartly dripped it out over, and like we knew about the capital gains discount. The word on that, the rumors on that started, back in February. They were really letting everyone know this is likely.
Yeah.
And it was a case of by the time you get there, it's like, well, you got anything new for us, Jim? And so it's, and as we'll get to though, the conservative media are still cranking up the fear and all the shock and horror, but kind of not as much as it perhaps would have been if they'd kept it all surprise and made it a big thing.
Yeah. Well, let's get to it. What were the big takeaways from the budget? What are the big changes?
Yeah, the big thing was the change to the capital gains tax discount.
We'll limit negative gearing for residential property to new builds from July next year. And we're replacing the 50% capital gains tax discount with inflation-adjusted indexation to restore the taxation of real gains. These changes will be prospective, and new builds will retain the option to use the 50% discount.
Long-time listeners will know we have talked about many times the fact that you get before Tuesday, you used to get a 50% tax-free. Mm-hmm. So if you invested in a property and made $400,000 on that property, when you sold it, you got $200,000 tax-free. What they're doing is undoing the change, that 50% discount, which was brought in by John Howard in 1999, and going back to the old way, which is just taxing it by taking into account inflation. So a pretty easy way to think about it is if, let's say, you make a 10% profit, but inflation in that time has been 6%, well, 10 minus 6, you basically pay tax on 4% of that profit. So whatever it is, so if you made 100,000, you're only paying tax on 40,000 or 60,000, depending on what inflation's been. So it's the real returns. But the one little thing that they put in, well, not a little thing, a really good thing that they put in is saying, okay, you're going to pay taxes on just your real returns, but there's going to be a floor of a minimum 30% tax rate.
Very good. Yeah.
Really good way to think about that is, okay, currently if you're earning more than 190,000, you're paying 47% in tax, so that's 45 plus the 2% Medicare levy. Half of that, which is what you would have been paying under the old regime, half of 47% is 23.5%. So that's the tax rate you would have been paying on your capital gains. Now it's like, nah, you're going to pay a minimum of 30, thank you. So it's a really significant change. There is a bit of transitional thing. It really only comes into place this time next year or July next year. So big change there.
Mm-hmm.
Another big change, negative gearing.
Yep.
That's ended for people who, as we now do, if you just buy an investment property and you can negative gear it, no more, but it's still there so long as you're buying a new property.
So that's to encourage investors, encourage new homes being built, new supply.
Yeah, saying, if you want a negative gear, and it's also the same with the capital gains tax discount. Yep. That still remains so long as it's for new properties. So it's clever in a political sense because it's saying, hey, you can't say we got rid of it. You still want a negative gear? Fine. Go build a new property or invest in a new property off the plan or something like that, new apartment off the plan.
Negates the argument that it would negatively affect supply.
Yeah. In fact, they're saying we're trying to encourage supply through this, whereas the problem with the old scheme was it was actually kind of beneficial just to buy an established house.
Yeah, as an investment property, not a build new one.
Not a new one. With negative gearing, it's fully grandfathered. So if you got a property, if you had a property before 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, you can still keep negative gearing that. And look, I can understand people saying, oh, God, that's just shitty and everything. And yes, it is. It would have been politically tough, and this is a big enough thing. But also, as Treasury kind of pointed out in the budget papers, because when you're negative gearing a property, you're actually losing money on it. Yep. That's exactly what it is. Your mortgage repayments are, let's say, I don't know, $500 a week, and your rent is $400 a week. You're actually losing $100.
The rent that you're getting on your investment property.
Yeah, the rent that you're getting from someone. So you're losing money.
Yep.
And you're doing that just because that would reduce your taxable income. But you're still losing money. So it's hard to do long term. And what Treasury has found is that most properties that are negative geared get sold after 5 or 7 years. You know, about three quarters are gone by 7 years. And so they're kind of like, look, we'll keep it grandfather because we know within a decade it's kind of going to have all been worked out of the system. So, and in doing so, it alleviates any concern that everyone's going to dump their investment properties all at once, which would have some ructions. And also it just politically is kind of savvy, and the impact is kind of marginal. So, but the fact that they have slaughtered these two dragons that were, we can't touch them, makes it a pretty big thing.
Yeah. Our friend of the show, Matt Grudnoff, said it was the first time he's been optimistic about housing affordability, which coming from him,
so often there'll be a housing policy announced that this is going to, and it will be the HAF,
the Housing Australia Future Fund.
And you're like, so you're setting up a investment system that you will get the returns on that then you will use to build new homes through lending to
very small numbers.
Or we're going to give a 5% deposit, which is fine, but kind of just juices demand. Same with first home buyer grants and all this. And every time they do one of these things, Matt and I and everyone else would be writing, okay, but how about you look at the capital gains tax discount? Are you ever going to focus on the fact that has been the sort of the ground zero of,
and they did it.
And they finally did it. And I don't think that should be underestimated. I think it's a really good thing that they've done. And, it doesn't mean Elinor's going to be able to rock up next week and buy a house.
What?
But it means that when you do rock up and buy a house, the person you're bidding against is not someone who's got a capital gains tax discount and negative gearing on their side.
Yeah.
And you don't.
That's something. Yeah.
And so it levels the playing field. That will reduce house prices in real terms. I don't think it's going to lead to a big crash of house prices or anything like that. And it's not going to improve affordability overnight. Remember, we've got 26 years of damage to undo. That's going to take a long time to recover. It might never get back to where it was. But at worst, it's not going to make anything worse. It's almost like hopefully this is as bad as it gets.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll also introduce a minimum 30% tax rate on capital gains from July next year and on discretionary trust from July the year after. This is about better aligning the taxes paid on these types of income with the taxes paid on wages. These changes will level the playing field for workers and first home buyers and support investment in productive assets, including new housing supply. And they will fund our new round of tax relief for more than 13 million Australian workers.
So what else have we got?
And this was something I think we talked about last week, because I certainly wrote about it, was discretionary trusts. And, gee, maybe I had a bit of a drop there. Me being a big-time journo, they brought in a minimum 30% on those family discretionary trusts.
30% tax rate.
Yeah, 30% tax rate, sorry. So as we talked about last week, if you got these family trusts where, let's say, there's one big earner who gets all their money from investments, from shares, from property, from whatever, what they do is they put it all in this family discretionary trust, and everyone in the family, including wives, adult children, cousins, wives, and that's been very sexist. Also husbands.
Yes,
What I was mean by that, like the sons and daughters-in-laws, I guess. I was thinking my wife.
Yep.
Basically, everyone gets income from that trust, and because it's split up 6, 7, 8 ways, it really reduces overall taxable income. Government said, you can still do that, but you're going to pay a minimum of 30% tax on it.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of people sad. Really quite stunning just how much it will raise by the time it really gets up and going in 29-30, because there is a fair bit of transitional stuff. The budget's predicting it's going to bring in about $4 billion extra revenue a year, which is really quite significant. Yeah. And given that almost, a massive chunk of trusts are held by people who earn over $500,000, and pretty much the rest of us don't even know what the hell a trust is, just shows how much money is in these things that they're able to raise an extra $4 billion.
All right. So good changes to how we tax wealth in Australia. So those are some good changes, but it wasn't all good in this budget, was it? There were some pretty massive cuts to the NDIS.
Yeah, swinging would probably be the word. There were huge cuts. The figure that was leaked before, and again, we all knew this was coming, was $36 billion. But that was kind of hiding just how big it was, because that was $36 billion over the 4 years. From 26-27 out to 29-30. And the problem is with that is the big cuts really don't start happening for a couple of years. And by 29-30, you're looking at $16 billion a year. And
wow.
So if we were looking at $16 billion every year for 4 years, it'd be a heck of a lot more than 36. So it kind of underplayed just how big the cuts are. I kind of, while I was in the budget, I sort of did a bit of a back of the envelope calculation comparing it to sort of percent of GDP, and to get a sort of real expenditure rather than thinking nominal dollars. It's kind of like about a 10% cut in real terms, which is massive.
Yeah.
Now, the government will say on the counter, they're still spending $55 or so billion on NDIS, which sure as hell ain't nothing. But a good way to think about it is, $16 billion cut. What raises just over $16 billion and about $17 billion gas export tax?
Which they did not do.
No gas export tax. Before the budget, Jim Chalmers said, but we're revising up the PRRT, the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax revenue, which is the gas sort of notionally super profits tax that the gas companies say, there's big revenue coming soon, end of the decade. Well, we're at the end of the decade, 29-30, and actually revenue from the PRRT is forecast to go down from a high of 1.9 billion next year to, by the end of the decade, 1.25 billion. It's going down. Things that are going up, though, beer excise going up. So the gap between beer excise and PRT is actually growing. So yes, we will be able to keep saying from now until the end of time that beer drinkers pay more in beer excise than gas companies pay in PRT. That is just a absolute fact. And it really highlights just how crap the PRT is because, we've got this is basically as good as it gets. There's never going to be another time, hopefully, where there's a war in Iran that closes the Strait of Hormuz, that has Qatar's LNG facilities reduced by 20% because of bombings. We've also got the Russia gas still subject to sanctions because of their ongoing war in Ukraine. So this is a great time to be a gas company in Australia.
Yeah, you really get to just...
And yet PRT is crap.
Yeah,
so it was
massive cuts to NDIS.
The figures were revised up from December. That's because the oil price had gone up, but they're actually still lower than they thought they were going to have 12 months ago in last year's budget. So it just shows this is really bad.
Yeah, I mean, that big gas gets a free ride while some of the most vulnerable members of our communities just get absolutely shafted.
Yeah, and it's something that all media talk about winners and losers. Gas companies easily were the biggest winners of this because, as I say, instead of paying $17 billion a year, they're going to be paying $1.2 billion a year. Now, no one else is winning by $15.5 billion a year. And as we point out, disabled people losing by $16 billion.
Yeah. All right. Well, since it has been a couple of days since the budget's happened, we've actually had a bit of a chance to see how everyone else has reacted to the budget. And as we've touched on before, the criticism that's come immediately after it, which it's got a bit funny, really. That's really grasping at straws for a lot of things, I think, especially when it comes to criticising the CGT changes. There was a column in The Guardian saying that these changes are going to kill off something called rent vesting. They just keep making up new terms for economics, don't they?
Yeah.
Greg, what is rent vesting?
Look, I'm not young, Elinor. This is something that you young people are doing.
This did not come from young people. Don't blame us.
There was speaking about young people, there was a question given to Jim Chalmers in his press club speech on Wednesday from, I think it was the Sky journalist.
So when it comes to young people in this country, are you really on their side? Or, as young people would say, is it all about getting that bread for the tax man?
Are you sure young people say that, Andrew?
And even Jim was like, are you really sure young people say that? And it's the same with rent vesting. This is a term that has been introduced by the property industry, I think, to cover people who rent in a nice place.
A more expensive area.
Yeah,
maybe.
more expensive area, an area where they would like to live because it's actually close to work, and they buy a rental property
as their first
home somewhere else, outer suburb, somewhere in a
less desired
area, and use that. So they're basically renting and also being landlords at the same time. Now, this is a very small thing.
Yeah, how many people are?
So it's about 500-600 a month, maybe 1.5% of all sort of properties sold. So we're talking really niche here.
Yeah.
And very much not the majority of first home buyers, and certainly not the majority of 25 to 30-year-olds trying to get into the housing market.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been crazy, some of the reaction. Now, obviously, the day after we had the Daily Telegraph suggesting that this was a communist manifesto budget, which I'm not sure in the Communist Manifesto or Das Kapital, Marx was writing all too much about just ensuring that landlords pay a minimum of 30% tax. I'm not sure that's what got Lenin going to the barricades demanding.
Yeah.
And since then, we've been getting a whole lot of sob stories about young people really actually going to be the ones who lose out from this because, as the Australian found, look, a kid, and I think you can relate to this. You're a bit closer to 20 than I am, Elinor. But
I'm not that close to 20.
Well, you're closer than
Closer,
I am.
yes.
Who, as you'll be able to remember when you were 20, you had a $50,000 share portfolio. And you're really quite concerned about how your capital gains from this are going to be affected. Or the other one who is, living paycheck to paycheck, but put eight grand into one company's shares and got a good return, was able to go and have a holiday in Japan like all other young people living paycheck to paycheck. So there's been a lot of these types of stories where, this is actually going to hurt young people.
Yeah.
And the young people.
Look at this young person's face.
I mean, there was one sort of News Corp columnist who on Twitter came up with a girl working, like she was about, I think, 22, working in Woolies, basically on minimum wage, but she was putting all of her wage into an investment portfolio.
Yeah. Also, to be clear, this wasn't a real person.
Was not a real person.
Yeah.
And to really underline that point, the guy used AI to actually come up with a photo of this.
And if you think of, what AI would normally come up with for a picture of a 20-year-old girl, it's that.
It's really
it's
quite,
very weird.
Gross and creepy. So that's kind of where they're at. They're struggling with this. The Liberal Party are saying, we're going to, vote against it. The government are really kind of feeling themselves at the moment about this. They're pretty hyped up, as they should be, because they're actually doing things that they should be doing. So it's amazing how good they feel when they do things that Labor governments should do. And they're kind of betting that this will be like the stage 3 tax cuts where the Libs will fold, that they'll say, we're going to dump it. And then they work out, hang on, if we keep this policy, we're going to the next election promising a tax cut for landlords and rich people. Yeah, maybe not. It's one of those things where you do it without you do it and just say, we're changing the arrangements like John Howard did. But if now the gig is up and everyone knows, hang on, really you're going to go to it? So not surprisingly, they've also very quickly shifted to migration and blaming
that old
migrants.
Chestnut. Yep.
And Angus Taylor's come up with an incredibly horrendous policy of linking migration with housing supply, which there are some brain farts that come along every now and then that just stump you, and that's one of them because it's completely unworkable. It just would be bad for housing, bad for the economy, bad for employers. Employers will be like, yeah, Angus, we actually need workers.
Especially in rural areas where they're kind of
but
losing
even
votes
hospitality,
to one nation.
All of these things, migration is not a bad thing. And this is just stupid. And they're really kind of lost. And all I would say to the ALP, if you are listening, see how good it feels when you listen to the Australian Institute.
All right.
Keep doing it. Keep doing it on gas as well.
Yeah, that would be good. All right. And we've probably just got some time as well to talk about another thing that happened this week. We had some new wage figures out. And I think these came at a very interesting time because, I think it was last week we talked about the interest rate rises, and the RBA cited concerns about a wage price spiral as
coming, Elinor.
Yeah, a justification for this.
It's coming.
So, Greg, considering we've got some new wage data out, how worried should we be about a wage price spiral?
Well, look, Elinor, I know you actually had a bit of trouble sleeping last night because you were worried.
I was
could not
so
get to sleep worried about this wage price spiral. That is, it's there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the day after the budget, the latest wage price index figures came out. These are basically the inflation figures for wages. They give us sort of a sense of what's happening with wage growth, and it fell. The private sector, which is what the Reserve Bank's really concerned about, because that's notionally where market forces are at play, they were just 3.2% annual growth, down from 3.4 in December. And that's actually the slowest growth, the lowest it's been since 2022.
Wow. Yeah.
So wage breakout, not a happening.
No.
And there was actually a really big drop in public sector wage growth as well. So Tim Wilson and all the libs and all the columnists at the Australian and everything can stop blaming government spending, even though most public sector workers are state government workers, police, teachers. It was just 3.3% annual growth in March. That was down from 4% in December. So at the end of last year, there had been a bit of just a few EBA agreements that went through that really bumped it up. And then in the first year, it went right down. So we're talking 3.2% private sector wages.
Yeah.
What was inflation?
What was inflation?
You don't have these numbers at your fingertips. Have I taught you nothing?
You have
Don't
the number.
answer that question. Inflation was 4.6%. So let's do some advanced maths here. Is 3.2 bigger or smaller than 4.6? If it's smaller, it can't be driving inflation. And that's very much the case. We're seeing there is no wage price spiral at all.
Real wages are going down.
There is no sign of a wage price spiral at all. Wage growth is going down. Why? Because, well, we did see unemployment rise a little bit, but also there was never any sign of a wage price spiral, even when inflation was high, even when unemployment was really low. All this crap from the RBA that there's going to be a wage price spiral is just code for we want unemployment to go up higher and we want the system to be geared to keep wages down, and it's working.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what that also means, real wages have fallen again. We're a long way from recovering all the value of our wage that happened, between 22 and 23, where it really fell off a cliff. The forecast in the budget and the Reserve Bank is suggesting it's going to still take a very long time to recover it. No wage price spiral. The budget also had very limited sort of impact from the public sector. So no sense that the budget's driving inflation at all. One of the things we didn't talk about, the Working Australians tax offset, the WATO, which is a $250 tax offset that you'll get, a bit like the old low and middle income tax offset. You don't get it every fortnight you pay. You get it at the end of the year when you submit your tax return.
Will that be the end of this financial year?
No, end of next financial year. So it's way off in the distance. It's not like we're all getting a $250 cash splash, and we're all going to go spend that all at once.
Listeners know that our producer Angus just made a terrible joke and we're not repeating it.
Yeah, we're not going to repeat.
Yeah, g'day listeners. Angus here from the Podcave. You might say you have to WATO for the WATO.
Can't do it. Also, I just love how there always has to be an acronym. The WATO, the WATO. As soon as I heard WATO, I'm pretty sure that was a character in the Phantom Menace. He was
the pod racer guy. No,
he was the guy who owned little Anakin.
Yeah,
WATO, and he was this alien. But anyway, that's what they've got.
But also,
we've really got off track here.
We have.
Watch Andor though, great series.
Sure.
So yeah, it's really a case of stop, for the love of God, Reserve Bank, stop worrying about this wage price spiral. It's not happening.
Stop raising interest rates.
Stop saying you're worried about wages growing and everyone, your inflation expectations increasing when the next week figures come out showing the opposite. Stop making yourself look silly. And that's all I have to say on that.
All right. Well, if that's all you have to say on that, I reckon that's probably a good place to end it.
A good place to end a really huge week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will be back next week with another episode of Dollars and Cents. This one, however, was caught on Thursday, the 14th of May, and some things may have changed. If you want to find out all about the budget, the ups and downs, go over to the Guardian Australian site and read my column. It's got 7 graphs on the budget and also my regular column, which has got all the stuff about wages and a bit of stuff about the taxes. But if you want to know everything else about the budget, head on over to thepoint.com.au. My gosh, there is so much content there. Amy Ramakis has been doing the live blog. Absolutely incredible work she's doing. Go and check it out. There is just so much to read and you will come away better informed and entertained as well. We've even got a review of The Devil Wears Prada 2 there. So,
oh, yes.
Yeah. No. So check it out. As always, our music is from Blue Dot Sessions. Everyone, we got through budget week. Well done. We'll see you all next week. Have a great one. Bye.
See ya.